All right, it's 12, so there's nothing like starting on time here at Go For. So we're going to get started. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Our webinar today is called How Not to Get Hired. So I'm joined today by an amazing panel of hiring managers, those who are currently in hiring positions, have done a lot of hiring in their lives, from all different industries and clinical settings. So my name is Ellis Mair. I am the co-founder and chief clinical officer at Go4. So we are super excited that you're all here, and we can't wait to bestow the knowledge from this panel upon everybody here. So I'm going to let all of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. So Chris Stackpole, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yes, thank you. Chris Stackpole, I'm a physical therapist, athletic trainer with the New Jersey Devils. My current role is the Vice President of Athlete Care, so I oversee the entire medical performance departments and the physicians, etc., that go into taking care of our players and helping our players perform. I'm a BU grad. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Chad, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Ellis and Andy. I'm Chad Clements. I'm the Director of Athletic Training at Boston University, where we have a staff of 23 athletic trainers housed in student health services and provide care for about anywhere between 1,800 and 2,000 student athletes in our varsity and club and ROTC populations.
Awesome. Tyler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Ellis, Andy. Thanks for having me, guys. My name's Tyler Green. I'm the talent acquisition manager for Onsite Innovations. We're an occupational healthcare company in the AT industry that's known as the industrial setting. So we partner with clients all over the US, providing on-site medical services, a lot around ergo assessments and ergo programs for those companies to try and prevent injuries on site. I'm in charge of all things recruitment and recruitment strategy, and it's lovely to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Beth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ellis. I'm Beth Jones. I work with Go4 and I head up the travel athletic training and contract services division. So this year we've had 45 ATs work nationwide in our travel AT program, and we're super excited to continue to expand on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. And then last but not least, Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Ellis. I'm not an athletic trainer. I was baptized by fire meeting Ellis. My former life, I was a high school biology teacher and the head lacrosse coach at a private school outside of Philadelphia. I started a youth sports company called Next Sports, where I met Ellis for the first time. And we built a business around lacrosse events and club teams. And then in my last 7 years with Ellis, because it's now been 15, 16 years, we started Go4, which is now the largest job board for athletic trainers in the country. Super excited. And if I can be to help of it to anybody here after the fact, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to help any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you. So today's format is going to be pretty fun. So obviously we have experts from all different parts of athletic training, and we're going to do a scripted panel first. So the way I've organized these questions, it's kind of going to start through the whole process of getting a job. So we're going to talk about cover letters and resumes, interview questions, questions that you should maybe ask as an interviewee, vetting an offer letter, and then talking about negotiations. After that, the goal is to open this up to all of the audience, and we want all of you to ask as many questions as you want. It's pretty unique to have this many different people from different walks of the profession. Things happen a lot differently at the Division I setting with Chad than they do in the industrial setting with Tyler, or they do with Chris at the pro sports. So we'd love to hear all of your questions. I mean, it's pretty unique to get this opportunity to just be very transparent and have a really cool open conversation with this group. So then at the end, I'm going to bring it back to our panel and I'm going to ask them, give us your one last piece of sage advice. So if you've got like one thing that's always like your biggest recommendation for somebody looking for a job, I want them to kind of bestow their last knowledge on the group. So let's just jump in and start. So starting with cover letters and resumes, First question that we have for you guys is, what is the cringiest or worst thing you've ever seen on a resume? Feel free to jump in wherever you'd like. Tyler's already unmuted. All right, let's go, Tyler.
Listen, I'm in the recruiter world, so right, I'm sourcing candidates constantly. I'll tell you two big things that were super cringy in my opinion on a resume. Number one, some people like to put photos on their resumes. Nothing wrong with that, right? What I would recommend, number one, is personal headshots, right? Get a photographer, do it the professional way. I have seen some crazy ones. I've seen ones where people will throw up a peace sign like they're taking a selfie. I've had somebody do a finger point before. Listen, it shows a little bit about your personality, but I would say when in doubt, do the professional headshot, right? It's kind of unnecessary and it raises a couple question marks. The other thing I would say about cringiness on a resume is maybe it's my OCD kicking in, but formatting. I have seen so many resumes that are 5, 6, 7 pages long, right? If you can keep it to a page, even 2 pages, right? Try to surmise what it is you want to put in there, but you don't have to put everything from being like a grill cook at McDonald's. I don't care about that, right? And also I've seen resumes where they format everything in the center, right? Not left to right. It's dead center, like it's like poetry almost, like it's a stanza. So I would say those are probably the cringiest things that I can think about in my 10 years of recruiting.
Like it. Beth, I know you've got some very certain guide rails for resumes. You want to talk? Beth is similar, reads a lot of resumes, so I'm interested to hear her answer to this question.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of Tyler, formatting is a big pet peeve of mine. So even if it looks really cool to you, if it's difficult at all to read, like I'm just sorry, not going to focus too hard on it. So, try to keep it within a pretty easy to read template. And then when you're done with it, save it as a PDF. So that way how it looks for you is exactly how it's going to look for somebody else. If you use a really cool font that you downloaded, that looks awesome in your opinion and you love it, cool. It's probably not going to show up if you send it in a Word doc to, the recruiting manager. So save it as a PDF so it looks exactly like, it looks on your screen.
I'm going to add to that. Save it as a PDF with your name. Think about being the hiring manager. You're going to get 50 different emails from different people that want this job, and you saved it as resume final. Like, you got to save it as like Mair resume or your full name. So in case there's too many Smiths on that have applied. So, Ellis Mair resume, and then save that as a PDF, just because otherwise the hiring manager is going to have to rename all their files and save it as a PDF, especially if they're collecting them, putting them in a folder and disseminating them to a hiring group. They're going to have to organize all that stuff. So if you make it easy for them to just have it organized with your name and save it as a PDF, I think that goes a long way too. Chad, Chris, Andy, anything to add?
Yeah, Ellis, I appreciate it too, having an opportunity to see some of these questions ahead of time and read what is the cringiest, because had it not been for my kids calling me cringy, I may not have known how to answer this. But one thing I think is really important is identifying the, I guess I'd call them the actual professional credentials that folks have. My friend and colleague, Chris Stackpole, has a lot of education under his belt and a number of credentials that he would list after that. Sometimes I'll see things like credentials, quote unquote, credentials related to like instrument assisted soft tissue massage and those kinds of things that are not really in my mind credentials. And so I would just recommend keeping those to actual professional credentials.
The one I can just add one. I mean, I've seen pictures of cats. I've seen a lot. I think Chad and I probably have seen the most resumes here with all these young bucks on the call. But I would say in 2025, the cringiest is when you leave the robots, as we call it, the artificial intelligence, the Chat GPT intro, still on your resume. So you want me to write you an executive summary or a cover letter for X, Y, and Z, and that is actually still in the in the actual copy. I would say that in 2025, outside of those other things, that's the easiest way. Not that people care about using artificial intelligence. In fact, I can tell you right now at Go4, as we get in our sort of, we just hired somebody, and their use of artificial intelligence was actually a reason why we hired them. So I'm not telling you to run from it. In fact, I would say embrace it. However, it would be really important to proofread your resume and make sure that the robot's intro is not still in there.
Great point.
That's fair. The only thing I would add, I get a lot of cover letters with overconfident tones. People telling me they're perfect for this job. Here's all the things that they would change and how they fit. And there's a certain amount of arrogance that comes off with that they end up insulting other people at times for what they write. So I think just having the appropriate tone, even in a cover letter, when you're trying to tell people why you think you would fit the requirements for that job, would be something to be mindful of.
Great point, Chris. So what's something on a resume that stood out to you guys in a good way? Like what's things that you're looking for?
Organization, like top to bottom, like not over designed. Like a resume, right, is if you think about a resume and hiring, and this is people can say that they do, but nobody actually likes to read 350 resumes, right? That's not realistic. Anybody that tells you that is not being truthful. So I think the key to something that looks great is that it's simple, it's easy to read, it's a font that everybody recognizes. Like that's not how you stand out, in my opinion. Like having like a hot pink or a baby blue font, like that's not how someone's going to remember them. I think that, at least for me, the cover letter, I know I'm joking about artificial intelligence, but like the ability to write is a little bit scary right now. About it's very limited, so your ability to write is important. So to me, the first thing that I read from you is that's the important thing. Whether it's, and Chris just referenced it on the cover letter, but some people write like an overview at the top of their resume. I read every single one of those, and that to me is the first step. Like, can you write and explain who you are and why you think this position works for you, and connecting those dots. That's what definitely works, is like a great written intro.
I would piggyback off of a couple things Andy just said. Number one, with the resume, to that point, myself and my team of recruiters, we're reviewing thousands of resumes a week, right? If one of the big standouts to Andy's point is organization. If I can quickly assess from your resume in a minute or less what skills you have, what certifications you have, what your experience is from most recent to furthest back, that's a good resume, in my opinion. Again, it's not about different fonts, different color schemes, those photos that I just mentioned a minute ago. Again, if you can quickly assess, okay, this person has done X, Y, and Z in the last 5 years, and here's the skills that they mentioned in those roles, and here's the certifications that they come with and the skills that they have, where they graduated from, and I can assess that in 30 seconds or less, that's a huge win. From a cover letter perspective and even a resume perspective, being able to personalize your applications are huge, right? I think we're all in a world where we fall victim to applying to multiple jobs quickly. You know, I could apply to 30 jobs in a matter of an hour, right? But what I often find with cover letters a lot of the time, especially in the industrial setting, is I get a lot of cover letters that say, "Dear recruiter and or manager," and then it goes into why they want a job in the sports setting. Well, I'm not in the sports setting. I'm in the industrial setting, right? So it's being able to personalize your applications to the roles that you're applying for, and being just slightly cognizant of who it is that you're applying to, right? And those extra minutes in time, they go a very long way in how we assess candidates and what candidates we end up reaching out to. Because I can tell you, when I see a cover letter that comes into a sports setting, I go, that person didn't take the time to actually see who they're applying to. Doesn't mean I won't always reach out, right? We're in some areas that are super rural, and hey, we got to take a chance. But already that's a first impression where I go, there's a lack of attention to detail there. So I think when you can personalize those things and take that time, it really goes a long way with the recruiters that you're speaking with, and then of course anybody that's involved with the business later on.
Yeah, for sure. And this has kind of been touched on, but I just want to drive it home for this is a call with a bunch of new grads. Everybody had to check off certain boxes to graduate your program, right? Like we all had to do like an off-campus rotation. We all had to work with a high school. We had to work with sports within your college setting. But as a recruiter, I don't care what sports you worked with at your school. Like everybody had to do like, oh, I worked with women's basketball and then I went to field hockey and then I went to volleyball. Like that's great. Glad you worked with collegiate sports, but what did you get out of that rotation? Just telling me that you worked with women's basketball at Temple. Okay, cool. Like for all I know, you stood in the corner and were just folding towels the entire time. Like, what did you get out of that rotation? What skills did you learn? How did you better yourself and your professional abilities? And how is that going to transfer over to this new job? That's what you really want to focus in on versus just what sport you worked.
I agree with that, Beth. I really like to see, to the extent that you can, some specific metrics maybe about, types of individuals with different health conditions that you've managed, or even what your patient volume looked like over the course of the last year or so. I think those are really helpful things to help understand the uniqueness of what your experiences have been.
Yeah, I agree with all. I think the only thing for me that really stands out is understanding times. I'll see a lot of resumes that have very vague times of when people were in positions and when they weren't. So being able to see clearly when you were in what roles, what you were doing specifically, as Chad mentioned, what kind of achievements you achieved or you completed while you were at those jobs, those things really stand out to help differentiate people from one to another.
All great points. Is there anything that you think about like from cover letters is like a bad way or a good way? Like what is your like number one thing for like the do not include this in a cover letter? I know we've talked a lot about what we have, like what we like to see. Is there anything that you like just are like, okay, do not put this in a cover letter, it's just not worth it. Don't take up the space.
I think that's a hard question to answer. I don't know what the other members of the panel think, because I think the cover letter is your personal introduction to whoever is like, I always think this is like top of the funnel. It's like, this is your advertisement, right? This is the Google ad that you want somebody to smash. All right. If you're into marketing and advertising, right? This is a way for you in literally 2.5 minutes to catch somebody's eye, to then turn the page and be like, you know what, let me check this person out and see what their background looks like. Because, in that opening statement, so to speak, I think we always think about, we jokingly at Go For talk about the cover letter being somebody's opening statement at court, right? For no other reason, just because it sounds cool. But the point is that that's where you're laying out the case on why this person should continue with your application. And I don't want to convey the message that it's all one way, because that's certainly not how we hire at Go For, right? Like we are very lucky to have people who are interested in working at Go For, just like these other organizations. So I don't want to consider, like, I don't think about it like that. But in a cover letter, and this comes back to this whole 2025 artificial intelligence, Chris was referencing it in terms of the tone, right? You really need to spend time on that, because there are more people looking at that than you think. And it is the easiest way to differentiate between an A player and a not A player, in my mind. Can you write? Can you organize your thoughts? And can you convey to me why this position and this description and Go For is something that you are very interested in joining?
So I think that that's a great point, Andy. Not a lot of people, one of the questions that I have written here is, do you read cover letters? And I think all of you have very much answered that question, that you read them and you read them deeply, and you really read them for, it's a writing sample. It is a reflection of you and your accomplishments and how you can fit into this organization. So I think that it kind of gets overlooked how important a cover letter really is. So I think that that's kind of a good takeaway. So thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to the interview. What are some of your interview red flags? So what's something that like somebody walks into an interview and you're like, you know what, that was what, whether it's the way they answer questions, some of the examples they give, like what are some of the things that you are your kind of red flags or common interview questions that you'll ask that that's one of the ones that you always ask and it really kind of makes or breaks the candidate for you?
I would say one of the first things I ask, again, being in the industrial setting, right? It's a niche industry still in the AT world, but one of the big introductory questions I always ask is, why are you interested in this role? A lot of the time, what I get is the schedule. It's better work-life balance for me, which is great, right? Completely understand that's something that attracts ATs to the industrial market, but there has to be more than that, right? Is it to help a different population of patients, if you will? Is it to kind of get involved in that public community health type of level of healthcare? Just a little bit of a deeper sense of things, right? I always say that that's kind of a red flag to me because again, it's sure that's a definite upside of the industrial setting, but there has to be more there, right? There has to be a different level of interest. I would also say just general red flags in interviewing that I've found is, I'll have some candidates who are like, hey, before I get into this role, how much are you paying? Right? What's the dollar sign here? Right? Which again, certainly a driving point of why people join companies, but to jump right off with that certainly is a red flag. Also, if you sound distracted, I get on so many calls with candidates that you hear a bunch of noise in the background. You hear cars zooming by, you hear people chattering in the background. Anyone that's generally distracted and asking you to repeat the question, or maybe they answer it in only a couple of words and they sound a little disinterested, right? Those are some general red flags that I look out for that will certainly turn me off to a candidate pretty quick. So I would say for anyone viewing this, go into an area where you're not distracted, it's quiet, you have the time to focus on it, and generally think about and do some research on the companies that you're interviewing with, right? It doesn't take a lot of time, 10, 15 minutes. Learn about that company, learn about what they're doing, how you can kind of relate to that and your interest in it, and be able to showcase that on the interview. And as much as we're interviewing you, you're also interviewing us. So bring questions to the table too. Ask about the company and what we do, what our core values are, things like turnover, right? What type of retention do we offer? What promotional opportunities do we have within the company, right? Learn a little bit about who you're talking to, and also understand that you're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing you.
Awesome, Tyler. Thank you.
I would add, in the context of the conversations and interviews, I've sometimes heard some folks, they may be leaving their previous employment because of, something that just doesn't go well for them. And hearing about kind of their dissatisfaction with previous jobs or previous employers or those kinds of things are something I might suggest maybe leaving out of the conversation that you're having with folks. And then, to Tyler's point, we have changed a little bit the way that we do some interviews too, in that one of the first steps that we have is to reach out to a handful of folks to talk through, we call it a transparency call, to really make sure that folks understand the job that they're applying for, to make sure that that's what it is that they're interested in, to identify some of the specific things, because, I get that folks, particularly if they're applying for, just coming out of school and applying for every job that they see come available, that they need to understand if it's a 12-month or a 10-month position, and sometimes that might not be abundantly clear. And so having those calls up front is important, and also even in that transparency call, sharing a salary range just to make sure folks know that that's the position that they are applying for, and making sure that everybody is in it for the that the next steps that we're going to be taking together are going to be fruitful.
I like that concept of a transparency call. That's cool. Good job. Chris, what about you? How's it in the interviewing people in the pro sports realm? What's that like? Like, how are some of those questions gone? Or like, what other interview questions do you ask and you like to hear the answers to?
Yeah, so we typically do like a screening call as well. So once I kind of dwindle down all the resumes, I'll do those quick calls that do kind of like what Chad said. Give everyone a lay of the land for what we're looking at. I do a lot of questions about what they're interested in or what they're not interested in, because many times we're hiring jack of all trades in some ways, where we need to do multiple different jobs from a redundancy perspective. So we need people who are multifaceted at what they do. So I'll learn a lot about people for what they don't like to do and know if they'll fit for all the random odd jobs we have to do in pro sport. Some of the things that stand out as negatives with COVID and all the interviews on Zoom and whatnot, environments, dress code, language, even like you'd be surprised how many people curse and just feel really comfortable on a first interview, and it's like we don't know each other, so you might want to think twice about the language you use and the environment you set up for how you demonstrate yourself and present yourself. But beyond that, like we try to give as much transparency as we can for here's what the role is, here's what the expected salary range might be, or at least get the expectation from the potential employee of what they're looking for to see if we're completely misaligned. But overall, it's those little things like how they present themselves and how they communicate, especially what Chad said. Like it's probably not a good idea to talk badly about the place you potentially are leaving or have left. So you might want to think twice about how you share that information.
I think it's a good point. Also, athletic training is so there's like that whole 6 degrees of separation theory. It is like 2 in athletic training. Like I got to Chris because of a different one friend away, and I had never met Chris. I never heard of Chris, and now we're here today. So it's like it is not hard to quickly make a connection in this world. So I think that that's a very good advice, is that if you've had like a negative experience, like what did you learn from it? How are you better? Turn it into a positive. So yes, maybe you did have to leave the job, but there was probably something that went well in the last year, 2, 3 that you were there. So like try and highlight, yes, I am leaving my job, but like I learned a lot about X, Y, and Z. Like there's ways that you can kind of demonstrate growth from situations that maybe you weren't a big fan of. Beth or Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
I think just overall confidence, and especially again, we're speaking to a group of new grads, and this might be your first job interview ever. But if you can practice with a couple of friends, there's a handful that you could probably Google, a handful of standard interview questions that are going to be asked in some way or another. So, just practice a couple of those and have some thoughts that you can quickly kind of convey. Have notes that maybe you can have on the call as well that you can refer to if you're nervous. But just overall confidence. I hate being on calls with people and I'm asking questions and I'm getting like 3-word answers and it's like pulling teeth, and I just want to get off the call as quickly as possible. That's not a good look. So even if you are scared and nervous, that's fine. But do the best you can to convey confidence, because you're going to have to do that in the workplace too. Especially with your first job, you're going to be nervous, but being able to overcome some adversity there is really important. And you're going to have to showcase that in your interview.
Yeah, and just acknowledge it sometimes too, right? I'm so excited and I'm a little bit nervous about this. I just want to thank you so much. And I think it's fine to say those things, and that'll probably help to make the calm you down a little bit too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What are kind of your favorite interview questions? Like, is there one that you so for me, I love to ask about mistakes. Like, because tell me about a time where you made a mistake and what you learned from it. And you would be surprised at some of the answers. Sometimes people will say stuff and I'm like, oh boy, that's quite a blunder. And maybe they should have answered that question a little bit differently. So like what's kind of your favorite interview question and what are you looking for in that answer? Like, I think people kind of have, when you're interviewing, you have to ask questions very specifically so you can kind of dig in and really see this person's thought process. So what are some of the questions that what's your like one favorite interview question and what are you looking for in that question?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Ellis. I alluded to it earlier a little bit. It's sort of a twofold question that I start off every conversation with is, hey, number one, tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and what have you done previously? Now for new grads, it's more so, why are you interested in this role, right? And I kind of leave that open space. It can sometimes be a little awkward for people, right? Because they don't necessarily know what to do with it, but they start talking, right? And once they do that, it'll tell you a lot about not only where they've been, where they've come from, what their experience looks like through their undergrad and master's level programs and what they've done in those rotations, but again, why they're interested in the role, as I alluded to earlier. It'll tell you a lot about a person, and it'll tell you a lot about, again, why they're in the conversation that they're in. I've had, again, as I mentioned, people just go, "Oh, it's the schedule," or, "Hey, transparently, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I just started my career, right? I'm open, I'm interested. I want to learn about different industries and what I can do as an AT." And, that's appreciated too, right? I think that level of transparency, certainly can give you some insight. But I think, again, being that it's a twofold question, it allows people to be comfortable to talk about themselves, number one, but again, also get a sense of the why. Why are they here? Why are they interviewing with me? What's those reasons? So I think that certainly is a great opener of a question, but it really sets the standard for what the rest of the interview will look like too.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Anybody else have a favorite interview question that you always ask? Chad, I'm surprised.
It's a pretty standard one. It's not going to be really fun for anybody, but I just want to know, what are your strengths? And what I look for is the difference in somebody who talks about something vaguely like being a team player or being collaborative, and somebody who really gives clear examples of things that they have done in the past with, whether that's collaboration or patient care, or how they handle a difficult situation or something, as opposed to kind of those broad. I would hope that anybody applying for a position is going to be a good team player. So I want to hear about some specifics.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beth?
Love that. I always try to ask something and I phrase it differently, kind of each time, but I want to hear about how the person has difficult conversations, because that's something that is going to be very important. And then a lot of times in our roles, we're putting ATs as head ATs in high schools where they're working by themselves. So if there is a difficult situation, they're going to have to handle it initially alone, and then they can come to me and we can, work on it together, or they can work on it with their AD. But initially, how they're having that difficult conversation, whether it's with a parent or a coach, I want to hear about how they've dealt with something similar in the past to know that they would be okay to do so, moving on.
Awesome. All right, let's move on from here. So the next kind of natural progression is we head into questions from the interviewee. What is the worst question you've ever gotten from an interviewee? And then what's like the best follow-up question that you've gotten, or one that you are hoping they are asking you?
When am I allowed to start taking vacation? That actually happened.
I have the same one. Took my
Not that is a like, and just so you guys all know, like, I'm not anti-vacation. Go4 has a unlimited, like, we want people to go away, to the point where we're yelling at people when they're responding on Slack or other things like that. I'm not sure that as you are engaging in a hiring process, that the first question is about not working. That is certainly important, but I think that is more relevant down the road when you're at the offer stage and those types of things. That's that's the most ridiculous thing I've actually been on a call with. And just so everybody knows how I responded to that, I don't think that this is going to be the place where you're going to have success. I appreciate your time. Good luck in your search. And that's how it went.
I'm sure everybody
Yeah.
just saw my reaction to Andy pointing that out. I've had it to the point where people will give me scenario-based questions. They'll ask me a general, what's your PTO policy? Then they'll start throwing out, well, let's say, I don't know, I break my leg and I can't come, like, what's the policy? And then they'll keep going. And I'm like, I think it sounds to me like you're more interested in not working than you are working. So I would definitely agree with Andy's sentiment there. I've had some, shocking enough to say, a few candidates who've asked me multiple levels of time off questions. Certainly a huge component to the benefit structure and package, no doubt. But to Andy's point, it's much more of an offer letter discussion than it is an initial discussion.
Yeah, and it's okay if you have a vacation coming up, right? Like the start date is June 1st. You know you're going away at the end of June. Hold that until that offer is coming in and say, hey, I understand that the vacation policy is this. As part of my offer acceptance, I need to let you know that I've had this vacation planned, and then that's when you can kind of slide that in. But definitely asking the interviews causes a little bit of concern. Chad, Chris, Beth, anything that you have from interviewee questions?
Yeah, I think, sorry, Chad, didn't mean to cut you off. So I have two kind of pet peeves when I say, what questions do you have for me? And sometimes there's a pause and it's like, well, I don't have any questions. Have some kind of question. Like, come on, do your research ahead of time and come up with something. And then I've had this happen recently twice, and I don't understand why, but the first question out of their mouth is, well, what's the dress code? What should I wear? It's like, really? But like we've been talking now for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, and that's your first question, like not about the facilities, not about like anything else. You're just wondering what you should wear. Like that to me just says you did very little research and you know, there's not a whole lot more thought process going on. Like when you have questions, have them be about the actual job, your duties, facilities, relationships within the workplace, interdisciplinary, how those relationships go. But like dress code, come on.
Good one, Beth. Chad or Chris, you got one?
No, I was going to say, I think I'm pretty sheltered. So I don't know if it's the industry I'm in, but we don't have that many bad questions. And it might be because we've already gotten to people who have been established in the college and professional settings. But I think the more I talk to younger grads, it's the silly questions like, well, what kind of gear do you get? And what's the travel like and the food like? And it's, the silly things that are the lifestyle things more than anything else. But thankfully, knock on wood, the people we're interviewing now don't have those questions. So I feel a little bit fortunate for that.
You left out.
Yeah.
I was just going to add because you said sort of worst and best, and a recent one was in somebody who was early in their career had just asked about how they can be supported in their own professional development, acknowledging that their entry level position and that they were really seeking to grow, and asking questions about how a department could support that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you can discern a lot from that answer, right? You can figure out, is this a place that's going to support me as a new grad? Like, am I going to get mentorship? What other kind of programs do you guys do here that help you develop skills? So I think that's a really good question to ask in an interview. Andy, did you have something to add or no?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're through the interview. Offer letter comes. So we are vetting the offer letter. Let's talk a little bit about benefits. So we all work in different realms, different settings. What benefits do you think are kind of useless and are a little fluff on an offer letter? And like, what benefits do you think are actually valuable or something that's specific to your industry? That's something to kind of look at, or like a differentiator for like where you work specifically.
Yeah, I can start real quick. So I would reverse this a little bit. And I think the first thing to do is you, as the applicant, need to prioritize what is the most important thing to you, right? So you being a 22-year-old, recent grad, recent certified athletic trainer versus like your priorities are going to be way different. Okay. And so what are all the things that go into an offer letter? Well, there's a salary, there's potentially a signing bonus, right? There's potentially some sort of performance-based bonus. I would say, well, what does it mean to get those performance-based bonuses? And those need to be very carefully laid out and agreed to. Then you have sort of the ancillary benefits that are somewhat expected in the world of today. But like health benefits, do you need health benefits? Are they really important to you right now? Do you need a 401k? Is there a matching? All of these different things. So what I would suggest is you get an offer letter. You should already have a framework in place on how you're going to evaluate that offer letter, right? Like, I can tell you from the other side to go for the reason that people want to work here, and we're not a clinical setting by any way, shape, or form. We are a growing business, right? Is because there is maximum flexibility. Like in our company, writing's more important than talking. We don't have meetings for the sake of having meetings, right? All of these things, right? And so by this time, you should have a pretty good idea what the company's about. What is your manager about? What is the leader or the vision for the organization look like? And then to me, if I'm in your guys' shoes, I'm just literally stacking up each piece of the offer according to my framework that's important to me. Sorry, Elsa, that's probably a little long-winded, but that's how I would look at it.
No, that's great.
I would I'd also say too, especially, and I'm speaking from experience for myself as a 22, 23-year-old, is, well, definitely to Andy's point, frameworking out what is important to you. Don't not think about the near future in terms of 5, 6, 7 years from now, right? Because again, 22, 23, I lived maybe a privileged life. I was on my parents' insurance until I was 26, until they had to boot me off. That's when medical, dental, those things became super important to me. But I wish I had thought about that 3 to 4 years prior, and really shaping out what company I wanted to go with, and what that support structure looked like. I would say no benefit is useless. I think they all come in handy at different aspects of your life. So don't forget that in the back of your head. But I certainly would say, always look at a company's, medical insurance, the support that you get there, what type of payouts you're having to make. What does that 401k look like in terms of company match? That's going to go a long way in your career as you, eventually work toward retirement, right? CEU reimbursement's another big thing, especially in the clinical world. I know that's a big selling point for us here at Onsite. We do a lot in terms of supporting our teams, and not only reimbursing for the basics, licenses, certifications, but also being able to offer those CEUs to go to different conferences, to different events, and help market yourself and build your own network too. So I would certainly say that's a definitely a useful benefit, but I would also say no benefit is necessarily useless. It just might not be useful right now for you.
Great answer, Tyler. Chad or Chris, Beth, anything else down on the benefit side?
Yeah, just like Tyler said, you got to figure out what's important to you. And if it's not something that's offered, can it be offered? So no harm in asking. Once you're at that point, that's not an initial question. As we kind of touched on before, this is once you have an offer in place. Hey, I noticed that you didn't, that XYZ wasn't included. Would that be something that you could accommodate? No harm in asking.
Good one.
If it's reasonable, keep it reasonable.
I was just having trouble trying to unmute before to say that I thought those were as an outstanding summary.
Perfect. So what if you're no longer interested? You got this offer letter, you're like, this is not for me. What's like the worst way you've been rejected, or like, and what is a professional way? Like, how do you want to be rejected?
I would love to take this question first. I'm sorry, I keep jumping at first for everything, but
Can we all just say it together? We're all going to think the same thing.
Don't ghost, maybe.
Don't ghost.
Yeah, don't ghost, right? Like, have the conversation. I think confrontation is not the right word, because it's never a confrontation. It's a negotiation, right? It's not a confrontation. But don't be afraid to have those talks with the companies that you're interviewing with. To everybody's point, don't go ghost. Don't go fly off into the ether and we never hear from you again. Because what does that do? It makes you ineligible for rehire later on, because we'll remember that. You don't think we will, but we'll remember it. I would say secondarily to that, be honest about why you don't think this is the best opportunity for you in a professional way. A lot of those conversations, what I've found is that when people bring up what maybe the obstacles or issues are, we actually have a solution for it. We just haven't talked about it, right? And I think that's a key point. And a lot of the times, it does come down to salaries and benefits, but there's different things that we may be able to offer that can help offset those areas of opportunity that you all see. But unless you have the conversation, we cannot help you. So have the conversation. don't ghost.
Any other rejection advice? I think that's like probably the best piece of advice. Exactly. All right, let's move on to negotiations, Tyler. That's a great transition. Before we're going to open up to the audience here for about 10 minutes of questions at the end. So start dumping your questions in the Q&A if you have a question for anybody on the panel. So let's talk about negotiations. Should you take the first offer? What's the math behind the curtain of when you, as a hiring manager, send out an offer letter? Is there, I've heard there's always like 10% left in the budget. Is there actually like should you assume that there's always more money? So how, should you negotiate? How do you do it? Like, what's your math and how do you think about this?
This is a loaded question, but I'm gonna attack it from. So if I am a recently certified athletic trainer who's just graduated, well, two reasons. One, there are more athletic, despite what anybody tells you, and I can tell you this full, but I am the biggest champion of athletic trainers who's not an athletic trainer. There is no better time to be an athletic trainer and get hired than there is right now. There are more opportunities for you than ever before. And so much so is that I'm betting my entire professional life on this. And so what I would tell you is that you should be entering in all of these things from a point of confidence, because you do have leverage. There are athletic trainers now who are not working in a traditional W-2 role. They're just working per diem. There's ATs that are working that want the D1 experience with Chad. There's ATs that want the professional experience with the Devils, right? They want to go work for Pivot in industrial or working in secondary school in contract services at Go4. The negotiation, like the first step, your first reaction is typically not necessarily well thought through, right? You get a number, you get whatever it is, and you digest it and you're upset and for whatever reason. The reality is that this group has gone through, like, hiring's emotional, right? And so it's equally as emotional on the side that's hiring as the people that are looking for jobs. It is, because we need to bring someone onto our team for whatever reason. And so what I would tell you is that it goes back to this framework about what's important, right? Here's the one rule that I know: everything's negotiable. Everything. And so whatever the budget, the 10% rule, I've never heard that before. Like, I don't think that's accurate. I've never hired anybody like that. Here's the reality. If we really, really want you and you really, really want to come work at Go4, we're going to figure out a way to get to where we are. Because hopefully, Chad referenced this early on, right? We do this at Go4. There's a transparency call or a screening where we're already at the offer, where we should be so far aligned on what the range is that there shouldn't be any surprises. The surprises are around, okay, well, how do we get there, right? And I would just say this, and I'll be quiet. The question that everybody needs to ask, right? Like, because you are new grads, and yes, there are more jobs for you guys than ever before in the athletic training space. But sometimes $5,000 isn't worth the other things that Tyler, Chad had referenced earlier, that there's other parts of the job that are going to make you better down the road for whatever, who knows what those are. And that's where I keep going back to, you got to have a framework in place on what's important to you. And a negotiation is not meant to be, that's not confrontational. That's like, look, this is what I need. This is what I'm looking for. Here's why, right? I would imagine that you could ask the robot for any sort of athletic training salary, data that you need to, right, in order to put that there. But I would also say, like, people like Chad and Tyler, right, and Beth, they already know, and Chris, they already know what that data looks like. So, like, they're not going to offer somebody something, like, they're not trying to operate a sweatshop, somewhere else in the world, right? Like, there is a mutual respect around when you want to hire somebody. That's a big deal. And so I think both sides need to approach that as, like, trying to find a way to get there. And maybe they can't give you more salary now, but then the question is, hey, Chad, if I fulfill all of my responsibilities and my expectations in the coming next 12 months, what is the likelihood, or how does the process work to ask for more money? And you know what? Chad's going to be like, wow, that is a great question. This is somebody that cares about outcomes, which is what really the world is about today. So to me, the negotiation is something that should be expected, but should be guided by the framework that you personally have set out. Like the way I negotiate is going to be different than Ellis or Chad or Tyler or Chris or Beth. So that would be my answer to that.
Awesome. Anybody else want to add anything negotiation?
I would say one thing, and to Andy's point, everything is negotiable, right? We've often gone over budget for candidates, experienced and new grads who we think are going to be really great fits from a cultural standpoint, right? That's a huge focus of us, something that candidates should be focused on as well. One of the things I always say when it comes to the negotiation stage, especially in the dollar sign department, right, is what's your bottom line? What are you looking for, right? And for candidates, for you guys listening, be honest, right? What is your bottom line? Because 9 times out of 10, we're going to be able to make it work. Or to Andy's point, hey, maybe we can't get you to exactly where you're at. We can meet you in the middle, but here's some other things we can maybe offer, some additional PTO, or, there's other things that can work out based on your needs, right? You just have to state what they are. What I would always suggest is when it comes to those questions and your bottom lines, be honest, but when we come back with something, don't go, well, I'm actually looking for $5,000 more. Like there's a negotiation, but there's only a negotiation for a certain time period. We're not going to go back and forth all day long, all week long, all month long, right? There's timelines to these things, but be upfront, be honest about what you want, because if you interview well, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get it. That's what I would say.
The only thing I would add, if you don't mind, is I've had people make the salary offers be personal in the sense of, well, I'm worth more. It's like, well, that very well may be true. This is what the role is paying in this setting for this team. And we have it at different ranks, right? So different places in the country, different settings, professional, minor leagues, etc. They're all different values for very similar types of roles. But that's the one thing I think I'd encourage people to avoid is making this be a character statement about who you are by how much you earn and how much the company's offering you. These roles are what they are many times, and the salaries are dictated by what's standard. So that's just something that I would encourage people to stay away from.
I would just add, I think, Ellis, you said the first question was something along the lines of, do you accept the first offer? It might be the offer that you wanted, right? And so it would be fine to do that. I would encourage you to, especially if it's a first or second job or something, is to allow that information to sink in. Ask if you can have some time, even if it's I could just use a couple hours. I'm really excited about it. I want to think about it just to make sure that you have thought through all the research that you've already done to prepare yourself, and be ready to make an offer, to just make sure that it's what you want.
Awesome. Great advice, everyone. All right, we've got several questions in the chat and we're coming up on some time, so I definitely want to get to these. Okay, so what positions require or would you recommend submitting a CV versus a resume? And do you do yourself a disservice if you provide a CV when only a resume is required?
I'll take this. I think you can submit both to any job that you're applying for, and I don't think providing both is a disservice at any point. I think if anything, even if only a resume is required, let's say, and you provide that cover letter, and again, it's personalized, right? Like I was talking about earlier. I think, hey, that person went the extra mile. Awesome, right? I consider that a green flag, never a red flag or a disservice. So I would say when in doubt, provide both. I definitely would say make sure you have both ready and available. I think some people make the mistake sometimes of going, they provide I don't feel like doing a cover letter. That's going to have both ready, but it's never a disservice to provide both. If anything, it's a bonus.
Yeah, I think that I fully agree with that too, Tyler. I think a differentiator too that this question might be asking is about the difference between sort of the one page, here's a high level summary of what I've done, versus the very long, this includes every single presentation I've ever given, every publication I've got, some of the other things that might not necessarily be on a resume. And I agree. I think it's fine to submit a CV in an application. I would just probably keep the really high level important things on the first page, and the other stuff that you want to include that, you know, is a demonstration of the great work that you've done. So fine to include, but the important stuff you want to highlight at the beginning.
Great answer, Chad. Similarly, we have somebody on here, Chip Cherwani, our friend for a very, very long time. So, he said that it was stated that a resume should be 1 or 2 pages max. How does this work for individuals who've been in the profession for 15 years? I think you guys kind of all just talked to that a little bit. You know, if you've been in the profession, you've done a lot of stuff, there's no shame in submitting a longer resume. That's a good thing to kind of give your background and all the places you've worked, especially Chip. I know you've been in lots of different places. You teach, you've been in secondary school, you've been at all different levels, the professional level too. So I think that's definitely, I think it's okay to go a little bit longer than 2 pages if you need to highlight all the cool stuff you've done.
I'd also say too, yeah, absolutely. It's, 1 to 2 isn't the hard line rule. The other thing is you can put that in, your skills section. Hey, I've got 15 years or more of experience, right? Summing that up and then taking the most recent or most prevalent experience that you have for the role you're applying for and highlighting those things in more detail. But that way it's kind of a 2 ways to be able to showcase how much experience you have and how many years you have, but also, again, not having it to be 5, 6, 7 pages long, right? That's more of the extremes, I would say. But that would be my recommendation too.
Chad, I feel like this is a good one you might be able to answer since you've got such a good educational background too. So somebody said, I took the BOC and began applying to jobs. I've been on interviews. Results came on Monday and I failed. I want to know how to proceed from here for job application wise. I've been told to not say anything, but what if they start wanting me and I have to say that I won't have the paperwork before they want me to start? So how should this person handle the situation of failing the first time and then applying to jobs simultaneously?
I think it's really important to be honest and to share what your qualifications and credentials are at the time of application. And an important thing to ask, obviously the expectation is that one would be certified and licensed at the time of start for the position, and to identify what that start date is to make sure that there's an opportunity to be able to accomplish that.
Awesome, thank you. So for new grads, is there anything other than experience that they can do to stand out to get an interview?
Yeah, write a killer cover letter. I mean, seriously. And again, like I know, and I saw some other questions here about, well, how do I get as a new person? Like, so, in all my experience of dealing with athletic trainers, everybody knows that they're amazing in the chaos. They do so many different things. They thrive in it. It's weird like that, but it doesn't faze them. Okay. What I would say, the reason I say a great cover letter, there are other things in your life that I am sure that people have done that can be recognized as something that someone is like, what are we looking for? We're looking for a self-starter. So you built a side hustle doing this. Okay, great. That's awesome. Or you were an athlete and you were able to get your PR in whatever it may be. There are other things like you're in a world where your credential matters, right? As Chad has referenced, like you're being hired for your skill set as a healthcare provider. And when you're coming out of your program and you're looking for your first job, there are other ways to show people that you are a self-starter, that you can write, that you can communicate clearly, right? Because the rest of that stuff, like, I'm just using Chad, for example, because he works at a big time D1 operation. It's like, dude, he's going to teach you the rest of it, right? What he's looking for, is somebody who is going to take the first step and like, did you learn something, right? Like, have you gone on your own and taught yourself how to do X? All of those things put a flag up, a green flag. They're like, okay, maybe they don't have the experience, but they seem to hustle. And that's really what we're looking for here as a hiring person. both inside and outside healthcare. I don't want to speak for Chad, but I would imagine that's the way he operates based on what I know about him.
I would just summarize that all employers have a clear responsibility in their transition to practice, and they should take that really seriously. And having somebody with the ready to go approach is really helpful to that.
Now I gotta put you on the spot again. So speaking to the Division I setting specifically, a lot of entry-level solution or positions are adjacent to what the GA role was. How do we as new grads differentiate our skills and ability from the previous path of the bachelor's to then GA path when advocating for an entry-level role in Division I institution? Do you want to speak a little about Division I and what you guys do different too?
I guess what I would say is that regardless of the setting that you're going to be applying for, and I recognize, I think that the key here is the GA role that kind of existed and now is moving away. But I think it would be a mistake for an employer to not want to look at folks' resume, their experiences, be really specific about the patient care that you've provided, the volume of care you've had. If there have been really specific educational components that you've had, for example, hey, listen, we did simulation in heat stroke, and I have physically used a thermistor in a real patient X number of times. Those kinds of things that really demonstrate the experiences that you've had are important, and I just would I wouldn't differentiate that among any level or setting or anything else. I think those are the most important things to really demonstrate that.
Great, awesome. So another one we have is here is some jobs don't post or aren't upfront about salary. So how do I ask about that before the offer, or does anybody have any advice if they don't want to spend some time waiting and then all of a sudden they get offered $25,000?
I have a very employee friendly response to this. Like, I think that an organization that does not post a salary range is a big problem. And I know that changes, maybe people have other ideas around this, but in my mind, there is somebody is looking for someone to come work with them and for them. That information needs to be conveyed. And like, to me, that is a massive red flag of the hiring organization. Like, and I'm not talking about, because, I don't know, you guys are out looking for jobs, like Indeed, you have to post a salary range. People are in Indeed putting in $5,000 to $200,000, and it's based on experience. Like, that's not helpful. I will just speak personally. I would think Ellis and Beth, as my colleagues and my teammates, would be like, at Go4, we put the salary, like, that's the whole nature of our business, is transparency, right? We want the hourly rate to be right there. We want, when Beth has a travel athletic training job, you will see on there how much you're expected to earn, point blank. There is no secrets. And I think Chad touched on this a little bit earlier. It's like, that's transparency, but that's the initial piece of trust. And guess what? And I think Chris pointed this out. It's not like we're putting like the person who's the hiring manager has necessarily been the one responsible for putting the salary number or a compensation plan together. There is a budget. These organizations are very, very big, right? So not making it personal, I think that is like, I'm learning something. That was a huge takeaway from Chris. It's like, it's not personal, right? We're trying to make a hire here. So I would just say, no, I said what I said. I'm good. That's like, you get my point. It's not, that to me is a huge red flag. And if I was in your shoes, I would no longer be engaging that organization around that, because you're going to find out at the end that it's not what you thought it was.
The only thing I would say to piggyback on Andy is I've gone through this in my post-professional career, and it is a big waste of time. I asked the company how much money they're paying. They said they didn't want to tell us. They didn't want to tell me. I went through the entire offer process. I was offered, and I said, absolutely not. Like I told you in the beginning, I wanted to know, and this is grossly under what I was expecting, and now you just wasted my time. It costs money and resources for them to interview me and fly me places. Like, to stay away from it if you can.
Yeah, definitely a red flag.
I would third all of that. I would also say ask the question too. If it's not posted and you're in that interview, ask. Right? I mean, again, if it's a good company, they're doing their due diligence, they're going to be able to tell you. And more importantly, they're going to be able to post that, right? And if you look at state laws right now, again, we're getting a little meta here, but more states are moving toward those pay transparency laws. We're fortunate enough to be on the progressive side of that to say, hey, here's what we're offering, right? To Andy's point, we have the budget, we have it all mapped out. And if we're good recruiters, we're going to talk about that on the first call with you and say, hey, here's what we're offering, right? Here's our range. Here's where we think you fall within that range. So that, number one, I want you guys to know what you're getting yourselves into. But if a company's not doing that, to everybody's point, it's a red flag. But two, ask the question. Always ask the question.
Awesome. I want to grab this other one here quick. So it says some applications require that you enter a salary range prior to initial interview conversations. If the job description does provide a salary range, does it do me a disservice to put the higher range when I was trying to get an interview?
I would just put negotiable right back at them. I'm serious. Like, Chris just laid it out. Like, there's nothing more annoying than a misalignment of expectations and compensation. Like, it is the single largest thing. And like, to me, like, obviously Chad, Chris, myself, Tyler, Beth, we all have these transparencies, which is our solution to this, because we don't want anybody to get too far down the line. It can work from your perspective too. It is absolutely in your right to ask. And if they ask you to put that in there, never put a number. Like, just say it's negotiable and right back at them. And then, like, because you're so early in the process, half of the job descriptions sometimes don't end up being what you're actually doing as well out there. We've seen that a lot of places. So anyway, that's my opinion. Like, just put negotiable back. It's annoying for like to not have that sort of information front and center.
I would agree on that one. Okay. How do you stand out with a CV or resume that's going to HR? Like, it's coming to an HR department, it's not going in AT, it might not even be going to anybody in healthcare. So like, how do you make that resume stand out? Tyler's like ready. He's
I'll say, well, because I'm a non-clinical person myself. So,
thank you, Chris.
We deal with this all the time. So, number one, what I would say is if you're a good recruiter and you're a part of a good company, number one, you should be speaking with the business and specifically the clinicians that are going to be eventually interviewing the candidates that you're speaking with to understand what they're looking for and, how that fits into the mold of the candidates that you're interviewing. So that's number one. I think it's on behalf of a good HR team to be able to understand to some degree what these clinicians are doing and, again, what type of experiences and skill sets we should be looking for. Fortunately, I'm a part of a company that we accept new grads coming in. We have mentorship programs built out to support those transitions for whether it be your first job as an AT ever or somebody coming from more of the sports setting into the industrial setting. So I'm fortunate to be a part of a company that supports that. But I'd also say too, again, simple stuff. Keep things organized, keep things clean, keep your cover letter succinct, keep your resumes succinct and organized. Again, the more likelihood is you're going to have somebody that's going to be reaching out to you. I would also say too, if you're a good recruiter and a good person in HR, that again, you lean on those clinical teams to be able to send those resumes out if you're uncertain, right? Because there are times where I might look at a resume and go, hey, I think they have all the qualifications. I'm not 100% sure. Let me get in touch with my AT division manager or the athletic trainer on site. Let them take a look at the resume and see, hey, is this a candidate worthwhile in speaking to? So I would always say if you're a good person in HR, you use your resources wisely. I'm also of the idea that if you meet the qualifications and the bare minimums, you talk to that person. You reach out, you make the time. At the end of the day, recruiting is a numbers game. So the more people you talk to, the more likely you are to find the right fit, even if it might not look like it on paper. So I would say, some of that's just company based, some of that's HR based, some of that's individual based, but lean on your people. And again, make sure that from a candidate perspective, things are organized and well thought out, like we've all kind of spoke about earlier in this call.
Awesome.
Just depending on the size of the organization that you're applying to, if there is a first pass HR review, the main thing you have to do is make sure that you look at what the minimum qualifications are and that you have clearly identified those on your resume, because if they're not there, that is their easy first pass. This is how we're going to weed these out. So be really careful about that.
Tyler, Chad, do you have time for like 2 more questions?
Absolutely.
Great. I just want to make sure that we don't, and we're invading people's schedules right now, so I'm sorry about that. So when is it appropriate to ask about licensure elements? Like, so when if you're transferring with a move, going from one state practice act to another, what's the physician relationship like? How and when do you ask those questions? Beth, you look like you're
These are
excited.
great questions to ask in the interview. Like when they say, what questions do you have for me? Well, you know, in the state practice act, I'm in Maryland, so our state practice act requires a supervising physician. Are you providing that? And who is it? Great question.
Awesome.
I can't agree more with that. I mean, those are the type of questions we want candidates to ask on it. That means you're well informed and you have a general interest in the conversation, right? Those are great questions to ask. And oftentimes we hire, like, again, state licensure requirements is a great thing I talk about a lot with candidates, because we often get people that relocate for job opportunities. If you're not speaking about those things, some recruiters have a lapse of judgment. They may not ask them, and God forbid those questions don't come up until the very end, and that could be bad either way. So I would say definitely ask them in those initial interviews. Those are great questions to ask and great things to get answered.
Awesome. All right, last one for the group. What's the right way to manage a situation where the company ghosted or they're not responding to an applicant after an initial phone interview? Like, what's the timeline for you reaching out? Like, how do you solve that problem?
I'd say if you don't hear from a company after they interview you within a week, number one, if you're a good company, you are following up, good, bad, or ugly. But if you're not, I would say within a week, follow up via email, give a phone call. And if they don't answer back, you're better off without them. That's my expert opinion for the day.
Yeah, no ghosting should go both ways, right? I think your
Absolutely.
response will be reaching back out to say, thank you for applying, but you haven't been made it to the final round.
And I'd also say too, I mean, there are times where, God forbid, the recruiter's been out of office for a few days and maybe they weren't able to follow up with you in a timely fashion. So a little bit of persistence goes a long way too, because that's another great way. Again, a good company won't be forcing you to do this, but if you are persistent, sometimes that gets you noticed in a good way too. So don't be afraid to follow up.
Tyler, there's one more question. Tyler, what is the name of the company you work with?
On-site innovations. I would say, so our parent company is Athletico Physical Therapy, but if you ever want to check us out, athletico.com/careers. We got positions all over the place, but On-site Innovations is the company I support.
All right, and then Chad, Beth, or Tyler, any last things that wisdom you want to bestow on the audience or share from anything we've talked about today, anything we haven't talked about today? What are your thoughts or any last moments that we didn't really capture during the last hour or so?
I think you've done an outstanding job, Ellis. This is really well set up and great questions, and I appreciate having the opportunity to chat with everybody else here. And yeah, I guess I would just say, just be yourself.
Awesome.
I would second that. Be yourself, be transparent, be honest, and be confident in who you are and what it is that you're looking for. And companies should answer that bell for sure. And again, Ellis, thanks for putting this together, and thanks everyone for allowing me to speak. Love the public setting. I love public speaking. I might like to hear myself talk a little bit. I don't know, but appreciate the time.
Beth, any last things you want to bestow?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like Tyler said, be honest, but also be honest with yourself. What is it that you're looking for? What is your ideal position? Don't try to just fit the mold of what's available. Think about what it is you want. Some jobs may not align with what you're looking for. And if some of those bigger things are not checking your boxes, don't move forward with the interview, you can decline politely, but really the biggest thing is just be honest with yourself and what you want. And that's gonna help you get to where you want to be ultimately.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Andy and Chris had to go. They had 1 o'clock things, but I'm glad. Thank you guys for sticking around a little bit longer. Tyler, Chad, Beth, we really appreciate your time and all your wisdom and your expertise in sharing with the audience today. Audience, thank you for joining us today. It was really great to have this conversation. Feel free to leave us some feedback if you want. You can always email us at contact@go4.io. Let us know what you thought of the webinar and if you enjoyed it and you'd like more stuff from us. So thank you again, everybody, and have a wonderful Wednesday. And yes, this was recorded, Victor. So this was recorded and we will post it and we will get it back out to you guys. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
everyone.
Alice. Take care.
See ya.